Moral laws. Someone is going to ask the question, so let's just ask it directly. Didn't Jesus abolish the law? It's a fair question, and it matters enormously for everything we've been talking about. Because if the answer is yes, if Jesus simply swept away the entire legal framework of the Old Testament, then everything in Leviticus becomes historical artifact. Interesting, maybe even instructive, but not binding. So what did Jesus actually say? Matthew 5:17. Jesus speaking, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." Not abolish. Fulfill. Those two words carry the entire answer, but they require careful unpacking because fulfill doesn't mean terminate, it means complete. Bring to its intended destination, accomplish what was pointed at all along. And to understand what that means for Leviticus specifically, you have to recognize that the laws in Leviticus weren't all the same kind of law. Scholars have long identified three broad categories within the Old Testament legal material. And while the Bible itself doesn't use these labels, the distinction is real and it's essential. The first category is ceremonial law. These were the sacrificial system, the priesthood, the festivals, the clean and unclean distinctions, all the ritual architecture of Israel's worship life. These laws were always pointing forward. They were shadows, as Hebrews 10:1 says, of something coming. Every animal sacrifice was a down payment on a debt that only Christ could fully settle. When Jesus died on the cross, the veil in the temple tore in two, and the ceremonial system was fulfilled. Not broken, completed. The second category is civil law. These were the specific legal codes that governed Israel as a theocratic nation, land boundaries, judicial procedures, penalties for specific crimes. These laws were tied to Israel's unique covenant relationship with God as a governing nation. They don't translate directly to modern civil governments, though their underlying principles, justice, equity, protection of the vulnerable, remain instructive. The third category is moral law. These are the direct expressions of God's unchanging character, His standards for human behavior that flow not from cultural context, but from who He is. Don't murder, don't steal, don't lie, don't exploit, love your neighbor, honor your parents. These don't expire. And here's the thing most people miss about Leviticus 19. The chapter we've been drawing from repeatedly. It is a concentrated eruption of moral law. Right in the middle of what looks like a legal code, God keeps interrupting Himself with a single phrase, "I am the Lord your God." Don't defraud your worker. I am the Lord your God. Don't mock the disabled. I am the Lord your God. Love the foreigner as yourself. I am the Lord your God. The moral commands of Leviticus aren't grounded in cultural convention. They're grounded in the character of God. And every single one of them is reinforced, and in most cases deepened, in the New Testament. Jesus intensifies the prohibition on murder to include hatred. He intensifies the prohibition on adultery to include lust. Paul quotes the love your neighbor command in Romans 13:8-10 and says it is the fulfillment of the law. James quotes it as the royal law. The moral architecture of Leviticus isn't left behind in the New Testament. It's built upon. Jesus didn't come to tear down the law. He came to be what the law was always describing. The moral commands of Leviticus didn't expire. They were fulfilled in a person, and that person is still asking us to live by them.